Welcome back, mercenaries. Wartales has added brand new character skills for every single class in the game. It takes an extremely long time to grind up the experience necessary to grab these skills, so you want to make sure that you are making the best choices as to what you pick. Some of these skills are absolute game changers, while others are not that good, and yet others are completely broken and bugged. Today we're going to look at all the new skills, their upgrades, and my new favorite builds for every single class. Diving right into things with our friend the Spearman, we are looking at the passive Preparedness. If this unit ends their turn while not engaged in combat, they gain Fury and Riposte. Fury is increasing their damage of their next attack by 50%, and Riposte is giving them a free counterattack if they are engaged by an enemy. It is incredibly easy for a Spearman to end their turn not engaged with the enemy because they have the mid-range attack out of their polearm, and this is going to very reliably give you Fury and Riposte. You're probably not going to see as much use out of the Riposte half, but increasing their damage by 50% is so nice as a baseline to be able to add to their power level, and it fits right into what was already one of my favorite Spearman builds, being able to use the spear wall. So on your turn you can go out, get your attack, set up the spear wall, and now that opportunity attack is going to be hitting much harder. Next up, we have Harnessing Strength, passively increasing your damage output by 10% for each bonus applied to the unit. These bonuses can come from any number of sources throughout the team, though it is important to remember that the Spearman has access to Brutality, very reliably baked in if you take Team Spirit, because this is increasing all of your damage rather than the 50% boost to just your next single attack. It is a little bit hard to balance where this one falls next to the previous passive. Overall, I come out in favor of Preparedness here between the two, because it feels like out of Harnessing Strength, you're going to have to be reliably placing multiple buffs onto your character to be able to get an equivalent amount of damage increase out of this passive. The final addition for the Spearman is an active ability called Last Push, costing a single valor point. It reads, applies to this unit and the targeted ally as many rage as they have debuffs +2. Rage is an incredible buff because it stacks for the duration of the entire battle. Unfortunately, this ability is one of the ones that is bugged and completely broken. It does not target an ally, it targets enemies, so you're giving yourself a buff and the enemies a buff as well. This means, of course, stay away from Last Push for now, but if in the future it gets patched and then the ability works as the tooltip currently reads, is it going to be worth it compared to the other passives? All of the Spearman's new abilities boil down to a percentage damage increase in a number of different ways here, and I think Preparedness takes the cake as being the best one far and away. Last Push is keying off of a lot of debuffs being present in battle, and this just has a lot of variance because there's plenty of enemy squads that don't apply any debuffs whatsoever. Final verdict is Preparedness is the best, followed by Harnessing Strength, and last is Last Push. My favorite build then for the Pikeman is grabbing Valorous Support, going down into Pikeman to be able to grab Spear Wall, picking up Team Spirit to gain Brutality, and then slotting into Preparedness, and this synergy right here is really going to amp up the Spearman's damage. If you're saying, hold up, what about all these other abilities that you haven't touched on? Well, I have guides breaking down all of these abilities and their upgrades from the slot of level 2 up to level 5 for all the different classes individually. While there have been some bug fixes and balance changes for these abilities, I'm going to try and call those out when we come to them in the video, but overall, I still stand by the advice and different builds that I go through in those previous videos. So if you want to be able to see diving in deeper for these specific classes, then you can check those out. They're all linked in the same playlist that this video is a part of. Next up, we are looking at the Ranger, going into Lieutenant Loki here, and probably best to get this one out of the way early, because with the addition of the unlockable Assassin subclass, we have 4 new abilities to go over. Starting out with a bang, quite literally, is Explosive Gas, the most expensive ability in terms of valor points in the game, costing you 3. It reads, targets a specific area, doubles the poison of all units in the area at the start of the next turn, then leaves a pool of poison. This ability has a lot going on, so let's break it all down. It's got the same target area and range as the Poison Vial, obviously meant to be able to follow up on a thrown Poison Vial to double up the stacks of poison. Poison Vial costs 1 valor point, so it does make this an extremely expensive combo, costing you 4 valor points points to be able to pull off. Activating this ability puts your character into a targeting stance akin to activating the Overwatch on the archers or being able to use the spear wall on your spearmen. You're going to aim at the area, and then at the start of your next turn, you can reactivate the ability for free this time, and it will double all the stacks of poison and then leave an enormous poison cloud behind that'll be permanent for the rest of the battle, and any units, yours or the enemies moving through, will gain an additional 2 stacks of poison. It will add these stacks of poison from the poison cloud as soon as it spawns, so an enemy that has been hit by the full combo is going to be sitting with 8 stacks of poison. This is going to leave enemies taking 40% of their health pool as damage in the next turn, and out of just starting positions, you can quite reliably impact 3 enemies out of your very first turn. The kicker here is that to be able to get the explosive gas to trigger, you're going to have to find a way to lock them all within the area. Ultimately, I feel this ability requires far too much investment for what it is giving you. It is not even reaching the 50% threshold of percent health damage to the enemies. Activating this combo, you're going to have to throw in another way to be able to get damage over time applied to the enemies, or another source of poison to be able to reach that, and you're just pouring so many valor points into this single ability. Turns from your other teammates to be able to hold the enemies in place for an entire round. This is a hard pass for me. Unfortunately, the Ranger abilities don't get any better with our next one, Low Blow, which is going to apply Blackout to all enemies in the area. This is a 4-meter area centered on your character. It only applies to enemies, not to your allies within the area. Blackout is a new unique debuff, and it says it has a 50% chance to cause the enemy to miss their next attack. Unfortunately, in my testing, I never saw them miss, so I believe that this ability is also bugged. Could it be that RNG has played a cruel joke on me and I'm just the unluckiest person playing Wartales? Maybe. If this ability works as the tooltip reads, I still don't think that it is a great option for your Ranger, given how strong the next abilities we're going to look at are. Cold-Blooded takes us away from active abilities into passive abilities, passively increasing the damage of attacks from behind by 35%. This is absolutely incredible because it's taken what was already a potent Ranger build, grabbing Valorous Victory, going down into Cutthroat, then grabbing Knife Throw, and now, of course, adding in Cold-Blooded. This combo is insane. You're getting Valor points per every kill. Cutthroat resets on every kill and is attacking 3 times on an ambush, which is attacking from behind, directly where Cold-Blooded is improving your DPS. The Knife Throw is added in, giving you a little bit of extra damage on top of every ability activation, and resets your movement, meaning that you can just keep on hopping to the next enemy as long as you want and chaining kills as long as you have Valor points to spend. Giving this flat 35% damage increase to what was already a powerful build is amazing, and Cold-Blooded is versatile enough because it is so easy for a Ranger to be able to sneak in and get those backstab kills. Will the final new passive be able to stand up to the raw power of the previous one? Well, let's look at this. We've got Retreat. Disengages at the end of their turn. If already engaged in combat, this unit gains Riposte, giving them that free counterattack. This is such a beautiful ability for the quality of life of the rogue, being able to make sure that they are disengaged at the start of their turn and thus free to be able to slink around and double team enemies, get those backstab kills. This really opens up a lot of strategic options for them, and it takes away the need to be able to spend those Valor points on Run to get the disengage. You can still bring Run, of course, as a safety in case the enemy comes in and charges against you. The setup here is if you go before an enemy, you stab them, so you use your basic to engage with them, then you're going to disengage and gain Riposte. The enemy then may choose to just run right into you, in which case you get this free counterattack as your consolation prize for being bogged down into combat, or they could choose to run off and target somebody else, and then you are free on your next turn to be able to go wherever you please. While Cold-Blooded and the previous build is certainly more powerful than utilizing Retreat, it is also a lot more Valor point hungry. So if you are choosing to spend your Valor points into other characters, then being able to grab Retreat is ultimately going to save you Valor points points, not having to use run, and be able to give you more strategic diversity for your ranger and get him into other situations where he wasn't able to act previously. I think the devastating cutthroat build is completely valid and incredibly fun to pilot, but my favorite ranger build ends up being going Valorous Audacity, dropping into the assassin subclass, picking up Deadly Contract, and then actually using retreat instead of cold-blooded. Next, Eowyn is going to show the new swordsman abilities, but first, if you guys have been finding the guide helpful, then leave a like. It'll get more attention onto the video and hopefully get more attention onto these bugged abilities so they get fixed. First for the swordsman is a new passive, Last Stand. As long as this unit has 50% armor or less, they have brutality, gaining a 30% damage increase. I think the swordsman abilities here have the clearest pairings to different archetype builds for the swordsman, and if you're going for a damage build, then Last Stand synergizes with that beautifully. It is not a total game changer, but it is very nice to have in your back pocket because once your character is worn down, very easy to happen and very quick to happen, especially if you're going for a two-handed sword, then you're going to be seeing this constant 30% increase to your DPS. Changing things up with an active ability, hand-to-hand combat at the price of a single victory point applies disarm to the target for 1 round. If the unit is already disarmed, it also applies vulnerability. Vulnerability means the next attack suffered is guaranteed to be a critical hit, and disarm says can no longer use skills requiring their weapon. This feeds into the destabilizing, strike, daring, debuff throwing out swordsman build, and I really like it as a tactical option. If you are thinking of combat of your squad up against a full enemy squad that you have a bounty on, this is probably not your best choice. But when you start thinking about some of the more unique and challenging combats in the game, such as arenas, where there's only 4 characters and some of the enemy characters are really designed to be the ones dishing out all of the damage, or up against, say, champions that have incredibly potent abilities tied to their weapon, then this ability can absolutely break the back of those enemies. So if you want your swordsman to be specialized as a ringer in these unique type of combat encounters, or if you're having trouble with a particularly challenging type of this encounter, you can hop into the respec zone at the companion training grounds to be able to grab hand-to-hand combat and see if that helps you out. Last up for Eowyn, we have Hardcore Training, a passive that reads, this unit is immune to bleeding, poison, or burning, so all of the standard damage over time debuffs, each time they should be affected by these effects, they gain a rage instead. Oh, this ability is so good because in the combats where enemies shoot out these damage over time debuffs, especially poison, they shoot out a lot of them. The showcase I have here is in a Crocswine fight where they're putting out bleeding on every one of their attacks, and Eowyn is just stacking the rage, barely taking any damage. But think back to when we were showing off what Loki could do with poison stacking. Well, you throw Eowyn into the middle of that with Hardcore Training, and then rather than having 8 stacks of poison at the end of Loki's combo, she has 8 stacks of rage. Oh, it is such a beautiful synergy. This is far and away my favorite of the swordsman passives. Hardcore Training is so good. You can get use out of this on any build that you have given your swordsman. The hand-to-hand combat is certainly for niche combat encounters, potentially worth respecing into if you're having trouble. And then Last Stand is focused for the Swords Master, the damage-oriented swordsman build. At the end of the day, though, my favorite build is grabbing a Valorous Duel, dropping down into Fighter, picking up Counterattack, and then Hardcore Training. Odo is bringing us to the Brute class, and here we have all passive abilities. First up is Guard Breaker. Attacks dealt ignore 100% of the enemy's guard. The amount of damage increase you will see here is going to vary wildly depending on the guard value of the enemies. So far, we've seen enemies on a range of close to 50% to 0 guard value. So depending on who you throw yourself up against, your mileage is going to vary, but overall I see this as a great addition to the Brute build, especially with how guard values have continued to increase as we've seen higher and higher level enemies, and we haven't seen the highest level enemies that they're going to throw at us yet. Guard Breaker is going to keep on having more and more value as you continue throughout the game. Next we have Temperance, and this one is a little odd because there is no mastery improvement to it. I don't know if we're just missing that or if we have the quote-unquote upgraded version? I don't get it. After taking 2 attacks, this unit gains deflection, and it has a counter attacks taken right there on the UI, which you'll be able to see in battle. Deflection is going to reduce the damage of the next attack by 70%. The tank build for the group was already very efficient, and adding this on top of it, so every other attack is reduced by 70% because of deflection, makes it so powerful. Finally, we have one-on-one. This unit has a rivalry as long as there is no other unit next to them. You may have already seen rivalry activated by your enemies above when your encounters above level 6. It is a new status effect that says damage taken dealt by the engaged opponent is reduced by 50%. I believe this is meant to feed into the destroyer build, where weakening blow is going to cut the enemy's damage, and then one-on-one is going to reduce it even further, so that you're guaranteed to be able to win out in these individual combats happening on the board. Having reviewed all these abilities, I think there is a build that can justify taking any of them, but my personal favorite is certainly Guard Breaker. I have always preferred Odo to be more of a damage dealer rather than taking up tank duties, and because they cut a whole Valor point off of Poisoned Impact, it has just made the damage-oriented build of Odo so good. We grab Valorous Chain, we go down into Smasher to be able to get Poisoned Impact, then we grab Cruelty, and now we have Guard Breaker. We are specifically always using the Legion two-handed hammer. So the full combo is you walk up, you use the two-handed hammer, it attacks the enemies on their armor, which applies bleeding. You then follow up with Poisoned Impact, and this is going to deal 36 damage and apply 2 poison to the bleeding units. So now they're bleeding, they're poisoned. Cruelty is increasing your damage and critical hit by 20% against units with a debuff, which they automatically have, the bleeding debuff. Here with Guard Breaker, we no longer care about their guard value, so after we crash into their armor value initially to be able to apply bleeding, we're then just slicing through everything they've got. And Valorous Chain means that we're not even investing a lot of Valor points. Next up we have the Archer, and they are really pushing these guys towards using the animal companions here, with 2 of these skills revolving around the animal synergies. First up is Taming Arrow. This is just a free special ability. Applies Fury and Riposte to the targeted animal. A 9-meter range on your shot. Fury is increasing that animal's damage by 50%, and Riposte giving them that free counter attack. Oh man, a cool ability that targets an ally? Yeah, this one's bugged, just like the Spearman's is. It targets enemies instead. Absolutely stay away until this gets patched, but once it is patched, it's pretty great. It's free. You're not paying anything. It doesn't cost your action. And if you have an animal like, say Fozzie over here, or any kind of bear, mine's level 7, you're going to be able to easily find them at much higher levels than that. Giving them Fury and Riposte does a lot of work. Because we're talking about all these animal synergies, we're going to hop over to Animal Affinity here to be able to talk about that. And I should also say that the Beastmaster is going to be getting their own separate video and a revisit of that build, where we look at all of the animals and the tactics that you can use around these swarms of animal companions and the animal skills that we've gotten. Whole new skill trees to be able to break down. A lot going on there, and this Animal Affinity is going to be part of that discussion. At the start of battle, gains the passive skill of 2 allied animals. Allied animals have a lot of different skills, as some of them are very situational and absolutely worthless on the Archer. In fact, most of them are, so if you're using a spread of different animals, don't take this ability. If you're using it, you need to be able to cut the randomness out and know exactly what you are getting, running a selective type of animal so that you are guaranteeing to be able to grab this passive that you want. The discussion as to what passive that will be, we'll have to wait for the Beastmaster video. Leave your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think the best Beastmaster build is? Honestly, the best Beastmaster build might not take either of the abilities relating to animals, because Thrill of the Hunt is that good. Each attack executed at a distance of more than 6 meters grants 2 range, and this is coming on top of a patch where the base range of, I think, all of the bows was increased by 1 meter from 8 meters to 9. Getting these stacks of rage throughout the entire battle are pretty great, but they are especially potent on the infantryman, or say the hunter. So the hunter is going to be able to spam out recoil shot to keep on stacking up his rage, but infantryman, your attacks of opportunity here are going to trigger this passive and give you more stacks of rage. It's set up in a 9-meter area, so enemies that are coming in are going to be triggering your additional rage. In this way, you can get up to 5 stacks of rage in a single turn. If you can hit the breaking point where these attacks of opportunity are one-shotting the enemies that are coming in, then you have absolutely won the battle. Thrill of the Hunt takes the best level 8 archer skill by a mile. Last but certainly not least, we have the Warriors. At the time of creating my previous guides, these guys were certainly on top as the most powerful class in the game, mostly based around how recklessness was so overpowered. Now that has been nerfed in a recent patch along with the addition, so do these new skills keep them on top of the crust? First up, we have a Battle Cry, an active ability costing a single Valor point. The unit and all allies in the area gain brutality for 3 rounds and a 10-meter area. Being able to pop this off at the beginning of battle can reliably hit multiple allies. It is triggering on yourself as well, helping make up for that lost damage on top of recklessness for your opening engagement. 10-meter area, very easy to get a lot of people in. Brutality lasting for 3 rounds. Lasting damage increase, so this is actually going to bring your overall DPS up beyond what recklessness was providing before because it's sticking around for multiple rounds. And if you have built-in synergy with stacking buffs across the party, then you can really see this ability sing. Challenging Shout is next, also an active ability costing a single Valor point. Draws within melee range all the enemies in the area and applies fragility for 1 round. My testing says that the tooltip here is a little misleading, so let's talk about this. We have a 3-meter area centered on our character. All the enemies within that area are going to be drawn towards you. They will get free disengages from any allies that they are fighting. My testing says that your allies don't get attacks of opportunity as the enemies break off to focus on the warrior, but that's fine, honestly. For a single Valor point, that's fine. Enemies move in a straight line towards your character, and if they hit an obstacle, they will just stop rather than moving in a roundabout way to be able to still get closer to your character. So if they conflict with each other, they're going to stay a little bit away. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because this obviously pairs beautifully with the Executioner ability. The Executioner's Cutting Maelstrom is a 2-meter area. So while you're drawing enemies in from a 3-meter area, if they get caught up on each other, they may still be outside of the range of Cutting Maelstrom. The build to really make this ability sing is grabbing Valorous Chain for the Valor Point generation. You have a 2-handed axe, any kind of 2-handed axe, to be able to whip around. Executioner for Cutting Maelstrom. Then Madness, damage increased by 50% against units with, once you upgrade this, is going to be 50% health or less. Foregoing Recklessness to be able to grab Madness, because Executioner, when you get lethal attacks, is able to attack yet again. So you can activate extremely insane attack combos out of Executioner, be able to set it all up with Challenging Shout, making sure that the enemies bunch up within range for the beheading. Finally, we have the passive Ecstasy. As long as this unit has less than 50% health, they always deal critical hits. This is feeding into a build archetype that they have given the warrior, where they're trying to dance around being low health. Fanaticism kind of plays into this. At the end of their turn, the unit loses health to be able to gain fury. I have never liked this build because at the point where your character has no armor and is at 50% health, they're just 1 enemy's attack away from going to dying, and then you are 1 misstep away from outright losing your character. Enemies have become more unpredictable in recent patches, where they're not so likely just to go and hit the enemy that is right in front of them, but they'll actually sneak around and try and finish off your low health characters. That means that really embracing this build is having a death wish for this character, and I just don't like it. Let me know in the comments if you guys have been able to pull this off. Guaranteed crits, obviously a high upside, but compared to the other abilities here, I'm not going for it. In summary, if you are running your warriors as executioners, you have to take Challenging Shout. This ability is going to set up some insane combos for you. For me personally, my favorite build here for Axe is going Valor's Duel into Berserker, dropping down into Recklessness, even though it's been nerfed, and then grabbing Battle Cry, just to be able to have a little bit more team support thrown in there, and to be able to make up for the DPS lost in the nerf to Recklessness. recklessness. As I said, stay tuned for the Beastmaster class revisit, where we are going to look at all of the animals, their skill trees, and how to be able to incorporate these woodland monsters into your party. If you found any particularly clever builds for any of your characters in any of the classes, let me know down in the comments. I love theory crafting around this and thinking about what is going to come as we get the next layer of endgame skills. The likes and support on the videos is truly fuel for my creation of these videos. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Until next time, thank you guys for watching and have a good one.